There are scrolls that were never meant to be found, texts that were buried not in sand or stone, but in silence. Among them, one stands above all others in its mystery, in its power, in its ability to unveil what was hidden from the eyes of men for thousands of years. It is called the Book of Enoch, not a book of stories, not a collection of myths, but a forbidden revelation that speaks directly to you, to your soul, to the very essence of what it means to be human in a cosmos far older and far stranger than we were ever taught. Before we go deeper into this ancient mystery, if you feel the pull of this knowledge, if something inside you resonates with these words, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. You are here for a reason. The algorithm did not bring you. Your soul did. Long before the great councils of men decided which books were holy and which were heretical, there existed a text so profound, so dangerous in its implications, that it was removed from the canon of Scripture. Enoch, the seventh patriarch from Adam, the man who walked with God and was taken up into the heavens without tasting death, left behind a testimony, not for priests, not for kings, but for seekers. For those who would come in ages yet unborn, searching for truth in a world drowning in deception. The Book of Enoch was read by early Christians, quoted by the apostles, revered by Jewish mystics, and then, like so many truths that threaten the structures of power, it was buried, hidden in caves, lost in translation, condemned as apocryphal. But the earth keeps her secrets only so long. In 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce returned from Ethiopia, carrying 3 copies of a manuscript written in Ge'ez, an ancient liturgical language. It was the Book of Enoch, preserved by Ethiopian Christians who never stopped believing in its sacred truth. What he brought back was not merely a historical artifact, it was a key to understanding who you really are, where you came from, and what destiny awaits you in the ages to come. The book opens with a cosmic drama that shakes the foundations of everything you thought you knew about reality. Enoch describes a rebellion in the heavens, a mutiny among the Watchers, divine beings tasked with observing humanity but forbidden to interfere. 200 of these Watchers, led by a figure named Semyaza, descend to Mount Hermon. They look upon the daughters of men and desire them. They take wives. They father children. Giants are born, beings of immense power and appetite so vast that the earth cannot sustain them. These are the Nephilim. This is not allegory. This is cosmology. The ancients understood something we have forgotten, that humanity is not alone in the universe, that our bloodline is mingled with something otherworldly, that within you flows the echo of a celestial war. The Watchers do not stop with seduction. They teach humanity forbidden knowledge. Azazel teaches men to forge weapons of war, swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He teaches women the art of adornment, cosmetics, jewels, the enhancement of beauty to seduce and manipulate. Semyaza teaches enchantments and root cutting, the manipulation of natural forces. Armaros teaches the resolving of enchantments. Barakiel teaches astrology. Kokabiel teaches the constellations. Ezekiel teaches the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel teaches the signs of the earth. Shamsiel teaches the signs of the sun. Sariel teaches the course of the moon. These are not gifts. These are temptations. Knowledge without wisdom. Power without purity. Technology without morality. Sound familiar? Humanity begins to spiral into chaos. The Nephilim consume everything. They devour the resources of the earth. They drink blood. They consume flesh. War breaks out. Violence spreads like a plague across every land. The earth cries out in anguish. The very stones weep. Heaven hears the lamentation. 4 archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, stand before the throne of the Most High. They report the chaos below, the corruption of flesh, the mingling of the holy seed with the profane. God speaks. The Watchers will be bound in chains of darkness. The Nephilim will be destroyed. A great flood will cleanse the earth of the abominations that walk upon it. But before judgment falls like a hammer upon the anvil of creation, Enoch is summoned. He is taken up into the heavens, through layer upon layer of reality, past the firmament, past the thrones of power, past the wheels within wheels that Ezekiel would later describe in his own vision. Enoch sees the throne room of God, blazing with a light that would incinerate mortal flesh, yet he stands in it transformed, witnessing what no man before him had witnessed. He sees the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, each one containing the essence of immortality. He sees the prison prepared for the rebellious watchers, a place of outer darkness where they will remain until the final judgment, a void where even hope dies. He sees the future unfolding like a scroll, the rise and fall of nations, the coming of messiahs and antichrists, the great tribulation, and the final restoration. And he is told to write it all down. For you. For this moment. For the generation that would live in the last days when the seals would be broken and the hidden things revealed. Here is where the revelation becomes intensely personal. Enoch is not just a prophet delivering messages from on high. He is a prototype. He represents what humanity was meant to become before the fall, before the corruption, before the watchers introduced their poisonous knowledge into the bloodstream of creation. He walked with God. He did not die. He ascended. This is your inheritance, not the fallen nature passed down through Adam, not the corruption introduced by the watchers, but the divine spark, the pneuma, the breath of God that animates your flesh and makes you infinitely more than dust. The book of Enoch reveals that you are a battleground. Within you, two forces war for dominance with every breath you take, the terrestrial and the celestial. The flesh corrupted by forbidden knowledge and the spirit yearning to ascend beyond the limitations of matter. Every temptation you face, every vice that enslaves you, every distraction that pulls you away from your higher calling, it echoes the rebellion of the watchers, and every moment of clarity, every act of genuine love, every choice to align yourself with truth rather than convenience, it echoes the ascension of Enoch. You are repeating a cosmic pattern that has played out since before the foundations of the world were laid. The text describes in vivid detail the structure of the cosmos as Enoch witnessed it during his celestial journey. 7 heavens, each with its own function, its own inhabitants, its own mysteries waiting to be unlocked by those with eyes to see. The first heaven is the realm of weather, of clouds and storms, the atmospheric boundary between earth and the higher realms. The second contains the prison of the fallen stars, those angels who mingled with humanity and are now held in chains awaiting judgment. The third is paradise, where the tree of life grows eternal and where the righteous dead await the resurrection of the body. The fourth holds the movements of the sun and moon, the cosmic clockwork that governs time itself, the great celestial mechanism that marks the seasons and the generations. The fifth is where the watchers who remain loyal dwell, weeping for their fallen brothers, grieving over the corruption they could not prevent. The sixth is where the archangels reside, studying the mysteries of creation, interceding for humanity, waging war against the forces of darkness. The seventh is the throne of God, beyond description, beyond comprehension, a reality so dense with glory that no human language contains words adequate to capture even a shadow of its majesty. You exist in the lowest heaven, the material plane, bound to flesh and blood and time. But you are not trapped here permanently. Your consciousness, that luminous thread of awareness that reads these words right now, that feels the pull of something greater, that consciousness is not of this world. It is trapped here temporarily, yes, incarnated in flesh, tethered to biology, subject to decay. But it originates from above. The Watchers knew this truth. That is precisely why they targeted humanity. If they could corrupt the bloodline, they could prevent the ascension. If they could bind human consciousness to material obsession, to carnal appetite, to intellectual pride divorced from spiritual wisdom, they could keep souls earthbound, unable to rise to their intended destination. Enoch is given a comprehensive tour of the places of punishment and reward that exist beyond the veil of material reality. He sees the abyss where the rebellious watchers are imprisoned, chained in darkness so thick it has substance, wailing in torment as they await their final judgment. He sees the spirits of the Nephilim, disembodied and wandering the earth as demons, feeding parasitically on human fear and pain, whispering thoughts of violence and despair into susceptible minds. He sees the place prepared for wicked souls, a realm of cold and fire existing simultaneously, a dimension of isolation and despair where the self folding in upon itself becomes its own eternal prison. But he also sees the dwelling place of the righteous, and here the vision becomes transcendent. Gardens of light where every leaf sings praises, rivers of living water that heal every wound of the soul. Trees bearing 12 kinds of fruit, each one corresponding to a divine attribute, each one restoring what was lost in Eden. Beings of pure radiance engaged in perpetual worship and contemplation, their joy so complete that the concept of suffering cannot even be remembered in their presence. And he is told with absolute certainty that this is not metaphor, this is geography. Spiritual geography, yes, existing in dimensions your 5 senses cannot access, but real nonetheless, more real in fact than the material world you perceive as solid. Where you go when you die is determined not by ritual or doctrine, not by what church you attended or what prayers you memorized, but by the actual state of your soul, by what you have become in this life, by whether you aligned yourself with the Watchers and their program of corruption, or with the throne and its program of restoration. The book contains prophecies that stretch from Enoch's time to the end of all ages. Enoch foresees the flood that will destroy the antediluvian world, wiping the slate clean of the Nephilim and their corrupted offspring. He foresees the coming of a Messiah, a righteous one born of woman but filled with divine authority, who will judge the earth and establish a kingdom of light that will have no end. He foresees a final battle, a war in the heavens that will spill onto the earth in catastrophic fashion, a time of tribulation, when the sons of light and the sons of darkness will clash in a final, apocalyptic confrontation that will determine the fate of creation itself. He foresees the resurrection of the dead, not as a vague spiritual concept, but as a literal reconstitution of body and soul, the opening of the books where every deed is recorded, the weighing of souls in the balance of divine justice. He foresees the restoration of Eden, the healing of creation, the removal of the curse, the marriage of heaven and earth in a union so intimate that the distinction between spiritual and material dissolves entirely. And he is told explicitly to seal up these words until the time of the end, when knowledge will increase exponentially, when people will run to and fro across the earth in vehicles that fly through the air, when the sealed things will be opened, and the hidden things revealed to a generation that has eyes to see and ears to hear. That time is now. You are living in the generation Enoch saw from thousands of years away. Why was this book banned from the biblical canon? Because it answers questions the authorities did not want answered. Questions that undermine systems of control and empower individual seekers over institutional gatekeepers. Who were the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6? The Watchers, divine beings who rebelled. What were the Nephilim? Hybrid offspring of angels and humans, beings that should never have existed. Where did demons come from? The disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, wandering the earth seeking bodies to inhabit. Why is there so much evil in the world? Because the knowledge given by the Watchers unleashed chaos, introducing technologies and methodologies humanity was not spiritually mature enough to handle. What is the true destiny of the human soul? Judgment, resurrection, eternal assignment to realms of light or darkness based on alignment with the divine will during earthly life. These are not comfortable answers. They do not fit neatly into controlled narratives. They suggest that the cosmos is far more complex than simplistic good versus evil narratives, that humanity is caught in the middle of a conflict that predates our existence, that we carry within us the genetic and spiritual legacy of both rebellion and redemption. The book was removed, labeled dangerous, hidden away in obscure corners where only the most dedicated seekers would find it. But truth has a way of resurfacing, like seeds buried in an ancient tomb that still sprout when exposed to light after millennia of darkness. What does the Book of Enoch reveal about you specifically, about your life, about your struggles and your purpose? It reveals that you are not an accident of biology, not a random assemblage of molecules that happen to achieve self-awareness through blind evolutionary processes. Not a meaningless speck on a meaningless rock hurtling through a meaningless void. You are a being of dual origin, created by divine intention, earthly in body, fashioned from the dust of the ground, celestial in spirit, breathed into existence by the mouth of God Himself. You carry within you the legacy of both Adam and the Watchers, both the original blessing and the ancient curse. You are tempted by the same forbidden knowledge that corrupted the antediluvian world and led to its destruction. Technology promises you godhood without the wisdom of gods. Transhumanism offers immortality without addressing the corruption of the heart. Artificial intelligence seduces with omniscience while remaining fundamentally ignorant of love, beauty, and meaning. Genetic engineering dangles the keys to redesigning life itself while ignoring the sacred codes written into DNA by the Creator. These are the teachings of Azazel reborn in modern form, dressed in lab coats instead of angelic robes, speaking the language of science instead of sorcery, but fundamentally identical in their promise of power without purity, knowledge without wisdom, advancement without alignment with divine order. And just as in the days of Noah, humanity races toward its own destruction, intoxicated by power it does not understand and cannot control, building towers to heaven while forgetting how to kneel in humility before the throne. But you also carry within you the potential of Enoch, and this is the great hope embedded in the forbidden book, the ability to walk with God despite living in a fallen world, to pierce the veil of material illusion and see the spiritual architecture underlying all things, to see beyond the temporary and grasp the eternal, to ascend through the heavens of consciousness while still inhabiting a body of flesh. Every spiritual practice you engage in, every meditation that stills your mind, every prayer that opens your heart, every act of self-sacrifice that crucifies the ego, every moment you choose love over fear, truth over comfort, service over selfishness, you are participating in the same journey Enoch made. You are climbing the ladder Jacob saw in his vision, the one that connects earth to heaven, the one the angels ascend and descend, the one that represents the highway between dimensions. This is not reserved for ancient prophets or medieval saints. This is not locked behind monastery walls or hidden in mystery schools. This is your inheritance, your birthright. Your destiny, if you choose it, if you fight for it, if you endure through the trials that will inevitably come to test whether your commitment is genuine. The text describes celestial calendars with obsessive precision, the movements of sun and moon, the cycles of seasons, the calculation of Sabbaths and feast days. Enoch is utterly obsessed with time and its measurement. Why? Because time is the prison of the material world, the mechanism by which eternal consciousness is fragmented into past, present, and future. In the eternal realm, the realm from which your spirit originates, there is no time. There is only presence, an eternal now where past and future collapse into a single radiant moment of infinite depth. But here, in the realm of flesh and blood and decay, we are bound to the wheel of time. We age. We decay. We forget who we were before birth and lose sight of who we will become after death. The Watchers gave humanity the knowledge of time, of astrology and calendar systems, not to liberate us but to bind us more tightly to matter. Astrology is not neutral. It can awaken you to cosmic rhythms and help you align with divine timing. Or it can enslave you to determinism, convincing you that the stars control your fate rather than merely reflecting patterns you have the power to choose or resist. The calendar can structure your life for sacred purpose, organizing your days around prayer and rest and celebration. Or it can fragment your consciousness into anxiety about yesterday's failures and tomorrow's obligations, robbing you of the only moment you actually possess, which is now. Enoch's message is crystal clear when you understand the deeper layers. Understand time, master its rhythms, use it as a tool, but do not worship it. Do not let it become your God. Transcend it by accessing the eternal present that exists beneath the surface of temporal flow. The book speaks extensively of portals, gateways between dimensions, gates in the firmament through which the sun and moon pass on their appointed rounds, gates in the earth through which spirits travel between the underworld and the surface, gates in the mountains where the watchers first descended, gates in the soul through which divine light enters and demonic influence intrudes. You yourself are a portal. Your consciousness is the meeting point of heaven and earth, the place where the spiritual and material intersect. What you allow through that gate determines your reality more than any external circumstance. If you guard the gate, if you filter what enters through discernment, prayer, intention, conscious choice, you become a sanctuary, a holy temple where the divine presence can dwell. If you leave the gate unguarded, if you passively consume whatever the world pumps into you through screens and speakers and social pressures, if you allow every thought and image and narrative to enter without examination, you become a battleground, and eventually, a ruin. The Watchers understood this principle. They knew that humanity's greatest vulnerability is not physical but spiritual, not the body but the gateway of the mind. Enoch's visions are not meant to terrify you, though they certainly can if you are unprepared for their intensity. They are meant to awaken you, to shock you out of the comfortable complacency that modern life encourages, to remind you that this world is not all there is, that the stakes are far higher than you have been told by institutions that profit from your ignorance, that your choices echo in eternity and shape realities you cannot yet perceive. The Watchers fell because they chose desire over duty, pleasure over purpose, the immediate gratification of forbidden experience over the long obedience of their divine assignment. Humanity fell because we chose knowledge over obedience, wanting to be like gods without being willing to submit to the God who made us. But Enoch rose because he chose communion over control. He walked with God, not ahead of God, trying to lead, asserting his own wisdom. Not behind God, dragging his feet, reluctant and rebellious, but with God, in step, in harmony, in trust, in a relationship so intimate that eventually the boundary between Enoch and God became permeable enough for translation rather than death. What does it mean to walk with God today, in a world that has forgotten how to walk, that races everywhere, that values speed over presence, that mistakes activity for purpose? It means to live in alignment with truth, even when lies are more profitable and popular. It means to cultivate your inner light through practices of stillness and silence, even when darkness is celebrated and noise is constant. It means to resist the seduction of forbidden knowledge, the shortcuts, the life hacks, the manipulations that promise power without the slow work of purification. It means to accept that you are in a war, not against flesh and blood, as Paul would later write, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And it means to fight that war not with weapons of iron or steel, not with violence or coercion, but with weapons of spirit, faith that moves mountains, hope that defies circumstances, love that casts out fear, truth that shatters illusions, righteousness that stands unmoved by fashion or opinion, peace that surpasses understanding, the word of God sharper than any two-edged sword. These are not abstractions. They are not mere concepts or ideas. They are forces, frequencies, realities that shape the unseen architecture of existence more powerfully than bombs or bullets ever could. The final chapters of the Book of Enoch describe a new heaven and a new earth, the ultimate restoration that has been promised since the fall. The old order passes away like a garment worn out by time. The corrupt systems that have enslaved humanity for millennia crumble into dust. The oppressors are judged with a judgment so thorough that nothing of their works remains. The righteous shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father, radiant with a glory that was always their intended state. The resurrection occurs not as some vague spiritual metaphor, but as a literal event, where bodies are reunited with spirits, transformed, glorified, made incorruptible, freed from death and decay and limitation. Death itself is abolished, thrown into the lake of fire along with hell and everything that served the kingdom of darkness. Tears are wiped away from every eye. Pain and sorrow flee from the presence of such concentrated joy. The curse that has plagued creation since Eden is lifted. The earth itself is healed, restored to its original Edenic state but greater, because now those who dwell there have passed through the fire of testing, have been refined in the crucible of choice, have consciously chosen the light with full knowledge of the darkness and all its seductive promises. This is the promise embedded in every page of Enoch's testimony. This is the hope that sustained the early Christians through persecution. This is what the Watchers tried to prevent by corrupting the bloodline, and what the powers of this world continue to obscure through distraction and deception. But it cannot be stopped. It is written in the stars, encoded in the scriptures, whispered by the Spirit to every soul that has ears to hear, and a heart soft enough to receive truth. You are living in the days Enoch foresaw with such clarity that his descriptions feel like contemporary journalism. The increase of knowledge happening exponentially, doubling every few years now instead of every few generations. The corruption of flesh through genetic manipulation, designer babies, cloning, transhumanism, the mingling of the holy and profane, the blurring of every boundary that used to give structure to human life. The rise of giants, not of physical stature but of economic and technological power. Corporations that span the globe and answer to no nation. Algorithms that shape thought and behavior more effectively than any dictator. Artificial intelligences that threaten to surpass human capability in every domain. The Watchers are no longer bound exclusively in the abyss. Their influence saturates the culture. They walk among us clothed in new forms, speaking new languages, offering the same old temptations dressed in contemporary garments. But so too are the righteous ones, the remnant, the awakened, the ones who see through the illusion and refuse to bow to the spirit of the age. You are either one or the other. There is no neutral ground left to occupy, no fence comfortable enough to sit on. The middle is collapsing, the lukewarm are being vomited out. The time for decision is now, and the decision you make will determine not just your earthly life, but your eternal trajectory. If you have watched this far, if these words resonate in your chest like a war drum calling you to battle, if something ancient and true has stirred within you that you cannot quite name but absolutely recognize, then you know. You know beyond intellectual certainty, in the deep place where truth lives before words can capture it, that you were meant to find this message. You know that the Book of Enoch was preserved through millennia of suppression specifically for you. You know that the journey Enoch took through the heavens is the same journey you are called to take, not physically through space, though pilgrimages to holy sites have their place, but spiritually through the dimensions of consciousness. Ascending through the levels of reality, peeling back layer after layer of illusion, confronting your personal demons and the collective demons of humanity, binding them with spiritual authority, casting them into the abyss where they belong, and rising, ever rising toward the light that has no opposite, the truth that casts no shadow, the love that consumes all fear and leaves only itself. This is what the forbidden Book of Enoch reveals about you. That you are so much more than flesh and blood, more than a product of history or environment, more than a cog in the machine of civilization. You are a spark of the divine, intentionally incarnated for a purpose known before the foundations of the world were laid. You have been tested in the crucible of matter, subjected to trials that would break lesser beings, tempted by the same forces that corrupted the antediluvian world. And you are destined for ascension if you choose it, if you fight for it with everything you have. If you endure to the end without compromise, the Watchers and their spiritual descendants want you to forget this cosmic identity. The systems of control want you distracted by bread and circuses, divided by manufactured conflicts, despairing about circumstances that are temporary at best. But the Spirit of Truth, the same Spirit that took Enoch up into the presence of God without passing through death, whispers to you in the stillness between heartbeats, reminding you to remember who you are. Remember where you came from before this life. Remember where you are going after it. Walk with God the way Enoch walked, and you will share Enoch's destiny. If this revelation has moved you, if you feel the call to go deeper into these mysteries, to seek the hidden things that have been buried by those who profit from ignorance, to walk the narrow path of the awakened few rather than the broad highway of the sleeping masses, hit that subscribe button right now. Join this community of seekers who refuse to accept surface explanations. Share this message with those who have eyes to see, with those who you sense are ready for uncomfortable truth. And let us together prepare for what is coming, because it is coming whether we prepare or not. The flood is rising again, not of water but of deception and chaos. The angels are gathering for the final confrontation. The books are being opened in the heavenly courts. The seals are being broken one by one. And you, yes, you reading these words at this precise moment in history, you are part of the story that was written before time began. Enoch walked into the consuming fire of divine presence and emerged as pure light. He shows you that transformation is possible, that ascension is real, that you do not have to remain trapped in the limitations of fallen flesh. The question has never been whether you are capable of this journey. The divine spark within you is more than capable. The question is whether you are willing to pay the price, to surrender control, to die to the false self, so the true self can rise. The forbidden book has spoken across millennia, its message finally reaching your ears in the hour appointed for its unveiling. Now the choice stands before you as it stood before every generation, as it stood before Enoch himself. Will you walk with God, or will you walk alone into darkness? The answer you give will echo in eternity.